All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Relevant Recruiter Show, where we share people's journeys in the recruitment industry to give our audience inspiration and knowledge about how to become the most relevant recruiter in their market. Today, I've got a phenomenal guest. It is Adam Posner. I've been following Adam for a couple of years now, and I'm really pumped to interview him. Adam is the founder of NHP Talent and also the host of the podcast. NHP Talent is a talent access consultancy specializing in recruitment strategy, talent processes, and operations for hyper-growth startups and marketing agencies and innovative brands. The POZCAST showcases amazing experts, thought leaders from around the world, going over things about business, recruitment, marketing, and other world-class amazing humans on their life, career journeys, and personal growth inspirations. That was a long-winded one. Adam,
mouthful,
welcome. Thank you for joining
me. Donnie, thank you so much for having me, and hello to your audience tuning in live. What's up, everybody?
Right on. Everyone give Adam a little love, and like always, feel free to ask any questions as they come up. Adam, as we get rock and roll, before we go, and let me turn my lights on, man. Let me do this a little bit better, huh?
I know. I got these nice lights over here. People are like, shit, I don't want to curse on your show. Sorry. You got to brighten it up.
It's okay. It's okay. We've got an audience that's okay with a little bit of swearing here and there.
All right, good.
So yeah, we're all good, man. So thank you, those joining us. Give us a little like, give us a little love, and ask those comments. Adam, before we get started into the meat of this whole thing, what's new and exciting in the personal life, man?
Yeah, man. Well, I moved into this new studio here about a month ago, and you can take a look at my LinkedIn page today. I posted a video, which is kind of like the before and after. It's like one of those TV shows that you see on like HGTV or Bravo or something. But I moved into an office space, which I've been waiting for many years, for a long time. Previously, I was working out of a WeWork type office here. And doing the show, it's hard. I had to take my camera with me. I had to take my lights. I had to take my microphone and everything. But I built out this studio. I completely renovated it, did floors with my buddy, painted it. And I invested in all this awesome equipment. And I've shot about 10 shows, my show and other shows here. And I love it. And still working on it. Got some shelves. I ordered some shelves last night, some corner shelves.
Nice.
I got a cool logo that's going to go right here. I got these awesome lights. Yeah, it's been fun.
Beautiful, man. That's awesome. And so do you work out of that too, or that this is just...
Yes. No, it's both. It's everything. It's multi-purpose. How we could write it off.
There you go. Absolutely. You got to be doing that. Well, awesome, man. I'm really excited to dig in about podcasting a little bit. Before we get to that, let's talk about your career journey. How did you get into the recruitment industry?
Oh yeah. How much time do we have?
We've got as much time as you.
Yeah. So long story long, as I like to say, and just to kind of bring your audience up to speed. Born and raised New Yorker, something I take a lot of pride in. I love my city. And on a side note, New York will come back. If any city can, it's going to be New York. And, I knew going back to high school and college that I was always going to get into business or marketing or something like that. Went to university, got some great, internship experience. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get into this ad space. So coming out of school, jumped right into ad world in New York. I worked in food service advertising, really learned how to be a professional. I think so many young people coming out this day, that's the hardest part, coming out of school and be like, shit, what do I do? What do I do in the workplace? Getting up early, right? Like all those little pieces. But, fast forward, spent some time at a couple of different ad agencies. And this will tie into the podcast part in a little bit, but I grew up and still a tremendous Howard Stern fan. Howard is the absolute best interviewer on the face of the earth. And when Howard made the move in 2005 from terrestrial radio over to satellite, I was like, damn, I would love to work at this little company called SiriusXM. Lo and behold, I applied. I got the job in 2006. I went over to Sirius in the heyday of Howard Stern, was there for about 5 years. I worked on the marketing side, direct-to-consumer marketing. I sold subscriptions. I sold radios to the masses. We worked with all the talent partners, worked with the Beatles channel, Bruce Springsteen channel, the Howard Stern channel. We marketed to their audience. So really learned marketing there. Was there for about 5 years. And then I was like, you know what? I need a change, which is crazy. And I made a left-hand turn to a little company called American Express, which was a interesting stop in my career journey. Because you know what, Donnie? I didn't like it there. It wasn't for me. It really was just not for me.
Environment?
No, but I learned a ton, man. I learned what I didn't like. I learned what I don't like to do. I learned the environment I don't like. But I learned some amazing things, like the financial side, the accounting pieces, the elements of a business, which I take me to this day, really keeping accurate records, the FP&L and all that kind of good stuff. Was there for about 1.5 years. And then I said, screw it, I'm going back to agency life. And that's exactly what I did. Spent some time at a couple different agencies. And it was about that time that Gary Vee was coming onto the scene, not the household name that he is now by any means whatsoever. And I had a buddy who was close with Gary. So I got my foot in the door, but I still had to interview. And I did not interview with Gary during the process, just a kind of final head nod on that. But I earned my job there and I got hired. And honestly, man, I thought the grass was going to be greener. I thought that it was gold. I thought it was going to be my forever job. I thought it was going to be exactly where I was going to stay for the rest of my life. I was going to be working for Gary. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. But you know what, man? It wasn't.
Right.
Two things happened. One of them was not directly my responsibility, where I was not fully set up for success. Vayner was a very different company than it is now. But ultimately, truth be told, I did not do what they hired me to do. And I lost my job about 7-8 months in. I got fired. And that sucked, man. It was one of the worst, probably the worst to this point, personal moments in my life, professional moments. Because at the time I was 35, been working for about 15 years in marketing and advertising. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do? I don't like this. It's not fun. I'm not enjoying myself. And how the hell am I going to go to any other company and interview and explain why I'm not working at Vayner anymore? And on that day that I got let go, which was terrible. And listen, anybody who's been fired, you know it's coming. If you don't know it's coming, man, for your performance, something's wrong with you. And that's self-awareness and accountability. You'd be lying to yourself if you didn't know that you weren't doing well. And we've had conversations. So it wasn't a huge surprise, but it still hurt. So on that day that I got let go, Donnie, I sat with Gary for about an hour and we talked about a lot of things. But the most important thing we talked about, he said to me, stop focusing on the things that you suck at and double down on your strengths. And at first I'm like, well, I've never heard that before. It's always been like, oh, you got to fix this. You got to work on this. You got to be, improve on these things. And think about it. I was 35. I wasn't going backwards in my career. And we talked about my strengths, what I'm good at. We're good at what we're doing. I'm great at relationships. I know the marketing and advertising industry like the back of my hand. So Gary goes, well, what else do you think you might be interested in if it's not going to be this? And I was like, well, I have a buddy. He does finance and finance recruiting. Donnie, before I could finish my sentence, Gary turns to me and says, dude, you'd be a fucking awesome recruiter. I was like, okay, great. Maybe he's just kind of like pat me on the ass to get the hell out the door. Good luck, kid. Get out there. And I walked out that day and I walked right into the bar about half a block down on Park Avenue over there at 10:30 in the morning, like the old man at the end of the bar drinking his whiskey. Very cliche, very cliche. So the next couple of months were rough. I spent my time, I did my due diligence, connecting with every recruiter that I ever have, connected with a bunch of recruiters I didn't know, referrals. And I learned as much as about the business of recruiting as I could without ever sitting in the seat. I learned the ups and downs. I didn't know what a draw was. I didn't know what a commission meant. I had no idea what any of this meant. And luckily for me, I interviewed with a company called Onward Search. And as they say, the rest is history. They took me on board because they valued me. And it wasn't a smile and dial type of place. It wasn't like one of the big shops like a Robert Half or a Solomon Page. Nothing wrong with them. But I knew those places weren't going to be right for me because I interviewed there. I walked in and it was just a farm of people picking up phones. I go, I never want to do that.
Right.
And this place took me in it. And I was a full desk recruiter from the beginning. And you're a recruiter audience, right?
Yep.
Everyone knows what a full desk is because they knew that I had the Rolodex to do the biz dev and they knew that I was going to jump in and do the recruiting the right way. And they say I was off to the races. And, I jumped in, with 2 feet. But any of you guys know it was hard. I mean, I literally went from a nice 6-figure salary to a $40,000 draw, a $40,000 draw. And that was tough. But I knew it was coming from those conversations.
Right.
And I did it. And luckily for me, I got the experience under a great mentor, a gentleman by the name of Tom Hall, who taught me the art and science of recruiting, how to understand a candidate's motivation, how to ask the whys, how to do an intake call the right way to really understand what a client is looking for. Spent about a couple of years there. I went to another search firm after that. And it was at that point, this is about 4.5 years ago at this point, almost 5 years ago. I came home one night and I was just not liking the place. I wasn't liking the systems there. And my wife said to me, she goes, well, if you don't like it, just leave. Can't you just do this by yourself? And that's when the light bulb went off. And that's when I launched NHP Talent Group.
Dude, that's awesome.
Was that short enough? I told you I couldn't do it in like a minute. Like to do it the right way, it's like a good 2 or 3 minute story.
No, well, we're going to hear the whole thing. And that's amazing. So, I mean, you got to work did you get to work as close with Howard when you were serious? Or was that,
no. So no. So I was on 2 floors above. Howard had like a bunker. I swear to God, it was like a separate entrance and everything. In the 5 years that I was at Sirius, I saw Howard twice.
Wow.
2 times. I mean, he literally is, just
untouchable.
yeah, it's weird. Yeah, totally.
And I think that's pretty cool. I mean, in first off, I mean, I appreciate you being humble enough to just share, that challenge of being let go by Gary. But I also think it's cool that Gary sat down with you and kind of lit you fire for the next step. I think that's pretty cool. A lot of employers don't do that.
He did, and he did things the right way. And anybody that follows my content, up until COVID, I run into Gary a couple times a year, whether it be in New York or whether it be, crossing paths around the country, which has always been fun at South by or any LinkedIn events, and just been always a tremendous supporter.
Yeah. That's funny when we were talking about this beforehand, because that, like I was sharing with you, like that Gary's what got my start on all social media. I did my first YouTube channel back in 2008 with Gary Vee. So I think it's just weird, that impact. And that you were probably working with him when I was following him in trying to emulate what he was doing. He had Wine Library TV. I started Flooring My Life TV. So
no, he killed it. Yeah.
Yep. So as you went out on your own, now, you went to an agency, got some, got your feet wet there, started your own company. Like, what was the biggest challenge that you faced when you started your own company?
Yeah, it was, for me, it was figuring out how to do biz dev and run the business at the same time from a deliverability perspective. How do I deliver to my current clients that I have? And I was doing a mix of contingency and contract work, and then build the business. And that was hard for me. And then I had to make the shift. I had to make the time. I had to figure it out. I had to put systems in place. And that took me 3 years to get to the point where I'm now, where it's a well-oiled machine.
Right. Well, I think those systems that you're talking about are really the key to being able to scale. If you don't have
a discipline, man,
it's going to be challenging. That's for damn sure. When it comes to I know that you kind of said that you were unhappy with the company. Your wife kind of said, "Hey, why don't we do this on your own?" But now, what is the why? What is the why behind the business? Why are you doing it? Why are you growing it? Like, what's the passion? What's driving you now?
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, and on my show, I talk about the North Star. And for me, it wasn't until, listen, it was kind of like phases. Like when I first got into recruiting, I understood finally what it meant to be in sales, to eat what you kill.
Right.
And that started to motivate me more, because I'm like, shit, I'm not going to make any money unless a lot of people, better or worse, you could hide behind a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting a consistent paycheck every week, you could slack it off a little bit, I mean, obviously, right? Exactly. Like you want to be conscious of your performance for sure. But like when you're in sales, you slack, you don't get anything. You don't make any money. And that was the first motivator to me. But it wasn't really, Donnie, until I went out and launched my own business, when I started to really understand the concept of legacy. And what I wanted to leave, and what I wanted my daughter, NHP are my daughter's initials. For anybody that doesn't know, I named the company after her. And every time I look at the letters, every time I look at my email signature, every time I look at my hat, my sweatshirt, the sign that's going to go up over here, I'm reminded of my why.
Right.
My why are my 2 kids. And my son wasn't born at the time. I'm sure when he gets a little bit older, he'll say, "Dad, why is nothing named after me?" And I'll have to come up with something. But it's my why. That's my North Star in front of me. I do everything for my kids, and I build this business, and I crush it, and I do what I do every single day for them.
Right. Now, what do you enjoy doing, with the kids from the rewards that you receive from the hard work?
Oh, that's a good one. And it's the ability, and it's really only happened over the last 2 years, and by no means is it financial freedom, but over the last couple of years, I've never had to worry about paying for something.
Right.
Not egregious, nothing crazy, nothing over the top, but we've been able to, instead of like, for example, the kids' summer camp, instead of like putting on a credit card or paying it off monthly, whatever, all right, pay for camp.
Right.
My wife wants a nicer car because after all these years of hard work, you know what? She deserves it. Get her the nicer car.
Right.
Nothing stupid, not crazy purchases, and I'm not making tons and tons of money here, but it's nice to be able to take the worry of money out of the equation. And I think that's for anyone in recruiting and sales. I mean, think about it. If you're working, let's say at Banner, I was making, 130, 140. Okay, you get a raise, and next year you're making 3% more. You got to wait 3 more years, you get a bump, you get a raise. Now I'm at 147, now I'm at 155. I could do that in 2 months.
Yeah, exactly.
And being a 1099, the whole tax situation, it's a much different world.
Yep. No, that's great, man. That's great. And that's going to, I think there's, money doesn't buy happiness, but, it definitely buys those options and things like that.
Yep.
And that's incredible. And being able to do that and have those experiences with your kids and stuff. I mean, we're definitely aligned that way. I mean, I've got five little guys that run around.
That's crazy.
Wife and definitely my drive as well.
5 all boys?
No, so I've got a blended family. So we've got I have 2 girls and a son, and then I have 2 stepsons as well.
All
And we've
right.
been all part of each other's life since everybody's young. So in our home, everybody's family. It's not step or that. It's just we've
No,
got.
just brothers. Did you see? Have you seen that? Was that the Adam Sandler movie Blended?
Yeah, we watched that. We
It's
watched
such a
that.
it's they're blending. You know, the guy in the resort in Africa, they're blending.
Yeah,
So I love that movie. I
yeah.
love it,
No, but
man.
that's been a fun journey, man, and it's been inspiring and yeah. When I'm footing the bill for 5, and I want to go enjoy things,
It's a lot of mouths to feed, man.
it
Do you
is.
do you just like do family style the whole time and just throw the food right on the table like a slop? Like, all right,
Yeah.
get it.
Exactly. Couple packages of mac and cheese, couple things to tri-tip, cut it up and go.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So right on, man. So I know, as the business evolved, one of the biggest things that's kind of been your anchor in the business has been like your podcast, the POZCAST. For those of you who haven't listened, you guys got to give it a shot. I mean, I think I looked on your website just before, 130 some odd episodes now.
Yeah, I got about 8 in the can right now.
Yep. So what inspired you to get that thing started?
Yeah, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but going back to February of 2019, I started to listen to a bunch of podcasts, and I was like, I think I could do better. I think I could do a better show than these. And I had this itch that I needed to scratch. And it goes back to what I was saying about Howard Stern. I feel inside that I've always kind of had this itch to be a broadcaster, to kind of be like a radio host. And the thing about Howard, in my opinion, he is the best interviewer on the face of the earth. And the reason that Howard is the best interviewer, and we're talking about when he came over to Sirius XM, because he's able to have a unfiltered conversation for as long as he wants. There's no commercial breaks. And he treats it just like we're having as a conversation. Not a Q&A,
right.
But what people don't see is how much research goes into it, how much preparation, how much work you went into understanding the host and watching their films or checking out their book or whatever it is, so you could have an informed conversation and make it organic. That's the difference.
Right.
That's what makes him a great host, and the ability to carry that conversation. I mean, I go back to some of the best. I mean, people I don't even like Hillary Clinton. He humanized her. Sorry, I don't want to get political here. Like, he humanized her.
Right.
And he talked about, I've never heard this before, the love story of Bill and Hillary Clinton, how they freaking met. Like, you never hear that shit on the news. But that's what I'm saying. Like, the interesting stuff, like he's talking about things. Same thing with Tom Brady. He had Tom Brady on last year. How him and Giselle met. I mean, obviously got into all the sex stuff. It was great. He pushed the limit on it. But those are the conversations. And I said, you know what? Let's give this thing a shot. And I remember my first show with a guy many of you might have seen on LinkedIn called Q, Quentin alums, guy with the hat. And we just did it. I recorded it on Zoom and I hit the record button and we just had an open conversation like this. And I go back to that first show and I watch it all the time. I'm like, all right, I've come a long way. But the other really cool thing is I called my shot in that first show. On the first show, I said, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to record with all these people from my career, and we're going to tell their story and my story and how they interject. And I'm going to interview Claude Silver, who's Gary Vee's right-hand lady at Vayner. And I did that on episode 50 in their office. And I called those shots. And I go back, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn or anything, but it's cool to accomplish something that you said you're going to do and have a time capsule of it.
Right. Well, I don't think it's tooting your own horn. I think you're actually giving inspiration to the audience that, like, hey, you can follow your passion, follow your ideas.
You can do it.
Turn it into life, by stepping in and taking action. I'm sure you didn't have it all figured out when you did your first podcast.
I had no idea what I was going to do. Going back to it, I wish that I had the advice of recording, 6 or 7 shows before I got started, but I did the one, I put it out. I'm like, oh shit, I got to record like a bunch more.
Got to do another one though. Yeah.
And the other part is consistency. I mean, aside, I've never missed a week since I started. I put out a show every single week.
That's impressive, man.
And thank you. And I think that's the hardest part. I got advice early on from Jordan Paris, who's like, dude, just get to 50, push yourself to 50. And then you'll know if this is something you're really serious about. If you could do 50 episodes, you can do 50. There's so many people out there that can't even do 5 because they don't realize how much work goes into putting out a podcast and doing it the right way and building the process and building the systems and doing the promotion. Unless you're a celebrity, unless you're freaking Michelle Obama or Oprah or Tom Brady going out there, you're going to have zero. You're going to have one listener. You're going to have your mom. You're going to have your mom listening, or your spouse, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your best friend. That's it. It takes work, and you got to build an audience. You got to engage. You got to build a community, and people give up too quickly.
Yep, that's
And
inspiring. You're episode 48, by the way, so I'm almost there. I'm almost
good. Keep pushing it, man.
Yep, I'm almost to my 48 mark, and I appreciate you
Do
being
it.
here with me. What was the biggest challenge when you started the podcast?
I think the hardest part was growing the audience. You know, when you look at your download numbers in the beginning, you're like, cool, 12 people. But the way to kind of think about it is, and it sounds cliche and a little corny, like once I got to like 100 people listening to an episode, I'm like, wow, let me think about 100 people standing in the room right now listening to me do this podcast. I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get up to 500. Like, all right. And you get 1,000. You're like, oh my God, imagine 1,000 people right now are listening to my podcast. And then the numbers keep growing. And that was hard though, because we all have, and it's not really self-worth, but it's like, why am I doing this show? Who's listening to it? And that's the hardest part about podcasting is being okay with the numbers in the beginning and knowing that you have to grow it and put in the work.
Right. I think that goes along lines too of any type of marketing, right? When people started going on any type of just straight up content journey, is being able to put content out for a while and realize that you might not get likes, you might not get comments, and you might only show on LinkedIn that you have 25 views of that post, but through time, and when you have to buy into that long vision, you got to stay consistent in order to get there.
Yeah, it's consistency, and you hit the nail on the head right there. For any podcast or any marketing, any biz dev, it's consistency. So I call it Posner's 3 Ps to success: patient, polite, persistence. Patient, do things. Patient, take your time. Things take time. We talked about it before. My business is growing from leads and seeds I planted 2 years ago. That's patience. Polite, just do things the right way.
Right.
People seem to overlook the how. Everyone talks about the why, Donnie, but it's a how. How do you do things? How do you go about your life? How do you live your life? Do you live your life the right way? Are you hacking the systems? Are you cheating, lying, stealing? How are you getting to the top? So many people out there with social media right now are all about these fake optics, the likes and the metrics and everything, and they cheat. And that's a house of cards that's going to fall because you can't back it up with the real work and the real proof. And then persistence. The last P is persistence, man. It's like OPP. the last P, that's for
you down with OPP?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. But like the persistence is everything. And the persistence ties into the tenacity. You keep at it, you stick at it. Tenacity is my word. Tenacity is that fire inside that drives everything that I do. And tenacity and persistence go hand in hand. And that's how you get shit done and make shit happen, man.
No, dude, I love that shit. That's good.
That's it. Right. It's hard work. Like there's no substitute. Everyone thinks because they look at the Gary V's of the world, they look at these other influencers, all these people out there with the shiny objects and everything. Most of them are hacking it. Most of them hard work.
Right.
But you can't get there without the hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no magic pills for a lot of it. You know, there's no shortcuts when you're building something legitimate like this. And I think that's important that people, you know, you went from, like you said, episode 1 where I think my first episode was probably my wife and my sister.
Yep.
And of course, my mom telling me how cute I am and things like that. And then eventually, I was actually shocked when I looked at my numbers a couple of months back, and I'm like, whoa, holy shit! Like, and people are actually listening to this show.
And people go back and they listen to your first episode because everyone, I love, like when I have the time, I love to go back and listen to some big podcasters' first show. Right. And most of the time, a really big podcaster, that's not their first show. It's the first episode, but they've had shows on before.
Right. So I saw a show you did a couple weeks back, and you were able to get the Grant Cardone on there. You know, from what I've seen, that was obviously he's a pretty big name. What was it like interviewing a guy like that?
So it's interesting. I'll tell you a little story how that came up. I was on Clubhouse. This was a couple months back. I was messing around on Clubhouse, and I had David Breer on my show. Him and I were talking. There was like 25, 30 people in my Clubhouse room. We were talking branding. We were talking marketing. And David did some work for Grant a few years back. So he's like, hold on. And he pings Grant into the room, and Grant jumps in. All of a sudden, I went into full podcast mode and I started interviewing Grant on the spot. The room went from like 22 people to like 1,200 people in a second, man. It was crazy. So all of a sudden, I'm interviewing Grant. We're talking about the show. And because I've done so many shows, I was able just to ask him questions right off the cuff.
Right.
I had my go-tos. I knew what to do. I knew the cadence. I knew I couldn't have done that. I would have been frozen if it was 2 years ago. And the same thing happened. And the last question I asked him is, hey, Grant, love to have you on my show. He's like, let's do this, man. And the rest is history. Grant Cardone is interesting because this is actually pretty cool because Grant is somebody I know of very well.
Right.
I did not have a positive kind of take on him because of just what was perceived in the media and what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it as an opportunity. No, and he's somebody that I would never outwardly go ahead and try to get on my show.
Right.
But I had the opportunity. So of course I'm going to ask. Imagine I didn't ask him. Imagine I had that opportunity and I didn't ask him and blew it. Right? Like, what a dick. So anybody who's listened to my show, it's an open format, and I go anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. I don't stop unless it's a crappy guest, which rarely happens. But I want to have that full conversation. But with Grant Cardone, they only gave me 15 minutes. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, what the hell am I going to do in 15 minutes?
Right.
It takes me 15 minutes just to ramble through my intros. So I decided that I needed to do something different and not my typical format. They also told me that they highly recommended, quote unquote, that I ask him a set of questions about his show. So I go, all right, I'm going to change the format. And for this show, I'm going to do 10 questions with Mr. 10X. And the first 3 questions were, I don't know if you listened to it, the first 3 questions were about the show and everything. And then I decided to just take it on. I took a left-hand turn and went in my own direction after I got him like warmed up and comfortable. Right. And then I turned it into my show, like what I do, right? And how I ask questions and how I.
How do you respond to that? How do you respond to that? Did
he was fine. No, he was fine. He's a professional. He does this all day long. Yep. I gave him a couple of questions that I wouldn't say stumped him. But one, I was asking how he deals with the haters, and he gets a lot of shit for, the church, he's a Scientologist. They get a lot of shit for the church and everything that goes along with that. And he just gets a ton of haters, and his response was great. It was just like, haters are my fuel. Right. Like if you're making it, if you have that many people hating you, like that much inbound, outbound, like you're doing something right, man.
Yeah.
Heck and he's like, you can hate me all I want. I'm on my G5 wads of cash. Like you hate me all like, screw you. You can hate me all you want, dude.
Yeah.
So it was a good one, man. And I go back and I actually pushed it to 17 minutes. They didn't stop me.
That's cool.
And it's a good show because it's different than anything else I do. It's compact, it's compressed, and I felt that towards the end when I was asking him those like personal motivating questions, they weren't the everyday questions that he feels. Right.
He's not used to the scripted. Mm-hmm. Here's what you're going to get. That's cool. Outside of him, who was your favorite guest that you've interviewed up to this point?
Yeah. My favorite show is episode 113 with Matt Higgins. For those of you who do not know who Matt Higgins is, season 10 and 11 of Shark Tank. He's an insanely accomplished investor and entrepreneur. And most people don't know he is Gary's partner in VaynerMedia. Huh. He owns about 40% of VaynerMedia and backed Gary in the early days. We talk about that story. But it was really awesome about the show. It was just such a natural conversation. And I was off the cuff. I felt it. I was in my zone, man. You know what I mean? Like you're as a host, like when you're in your zone. And I wasn't even looking at the notes. I mean, I looked down a couple of times at where I wanted to go. But we talked about things that he's never spoken about. He was at ground zero on 9/11. He got cancer from that. He never talked about that.
Wow.
And we got real personal and deep. And I look back as a host, like when you go back and watch a tape as an athlete and you're like, damn, that was my glory. Like I was in the moment. I was in the zone. Like, and I look at the video and I could look in my eyes and I could see the excitement and I could see that I was locked in and I wasn't like, looking at my phone. I wasn't looking like, you know what I mean? Like I was just in it. And that's episode 113 with Matt Higgins. For anybody who wants to check that one out, like, I'm not even doing it for the download numbers. It's just, honestly, it's just a great conversation. Like it really is. And I'll listen to that like once every couple of months. I've gone back and listened to it a few times. Right. And it's just motivational, man.
Yeah. If you're kind enough, if you're willing to, what would be the show that you say kind of fell on your face while you were doing it?
It's interesting. I can't really think of like the specific shows, but there's definitely been shows where either for something going on in my life, for some reason, well, it's interesting. Let me back it up a minute. When I record, when I'm on the show, when I'm doing the show and the lights are on, when the mic is on, I kick into 6th gear, I call it. I kick into a gear, which is like an athlete stepping onto the field, right? The adrenaline's flowing, you're in your zone and everything. But for whatever reason, there's definitely been a couple of shows where maybe there was something going on during the day in my life personally, and I wasn't fully locked in. I didn't give it my all. And I wouldn't say I phoned it in, but it probably weren't my best shows. Maybe it was a little bit more clinical. Like I had my notes in front of me. I'm going to do my show. I'm going to go through it. I think I've had a couple of those. And if the guest is great, you'll overcome that and you'll never know the difference. But I'll know it. I'll know that I didn't give it my best. The guest brought the energy level up. And on the opposite side of that, I've definitely had a couple of guests on where they maybe they're not experienced as a podcast guest. Maybe they haven't done a lot of shows. Maybe their technology is screwed up. They don't have a great connection. Whatever the reason is, maybe they're just a dud, and they're not great shows. And you have to push through it. And it's like pulling teeth sometimes. But luckily for me, I've really tried to do a lot better job at vetting the guests and doing the preparation in advance to make sure that go listen to a few of their other shows, see if their energy level's up. I mean, the last thing you want, because you always have to keep your listener in mind, right?
Yep.
The quality and product, the quality of your show, and that's your product. The show's a product.
Right. So what would you say, like, kind of tying in now the recruiting business and the podcast, like how do you make those two things work together?
Yeah. So the podcast fuels my business fuels the podcast. They are synergistic as it gets. And this is the way I explain it, because a lot of people ask me like, oh, how do you make money on your show? Right? Because if folks know, like, for advertising revenue, you really need to have like 25,000 downloads to even make anything on a CPM basis. That's really hard to do.
Right.
So for me, I monetize my guest, not the audience. The majority of guests that I book on my show are from a business development approach.
Right.
I ask decision makers at companies that I want to work with to come on my show to tell their career story, their learnings, their successes and failures, talk about how they build the company, how they maintain culture. Over the last 13 months, let's talk about how your team has operated during COVID. Right. How have you hired? How have you fired? How have you built your team and maintained it? You have those conversations, you're engaging with them. And then afterwards is when after you build that relationship, then you start talking about the business instead of cold calling, emails, blasting the crap out of people. And it's a game changer.
Totally, man.
It's and I've been thinking a lot about how to teach that to others. I've been thinking about putting the POZ course together to really show how that works from a systems and process perspective.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge. And I think that's, it's such an easy in with the company, because who doesn't, in most cases, want to share their story, right? As long as there's some value there, and you're not even asking for anything. You're basically doing them a favor. You're scratching their back before you get to the point of asking for business.
Oh, 100%.
Most people are leading with, the right hook, if you will.
Yeah, they're leading with if you go back to Gary Vee, it's a jab, right hook.
Right.
And
exactly.
you gotta like soften them up before you try to knock them down, right?
Yep. And so you've obviously been able to you probably calculate a lot of business that's coming directly from the podcast.
Yeah. The ROI on that is fantastic.
Right.
It really is. But it's also the other parts as well. The outbound, which is the thought leadership, the credibility, the social proof, all those kind of things that you can't buy. You have to create them. You have to create them.
Do you get a lot of feedback from now that you've actually, started with no audience? Now we've got I don't know what the numbers are, but you've got a pretty sizable audience that are following. Would you say a good portion of those are your clients and candidates? And does that make all of that interaction engagement even easier, on the candidate side?
Yeah, 100%. Because we were talking about before, as a recruiter, the idea of putting yourself out there as a thought leader, the credibility is huge, recognizable. Like, marketing and advertising, I'll call Adam.
Right.
Why? Because they see me all over freaking LinkedIn. They see the podcast,
Well, and I think that's, the podcast, and we talked about it before, but how do you repurpose some of the content, because you have the promotion, you have the follow-up. I mean, there's so much that comes from just running a show.
Yeah. And going back to Gary Vee, it's a content pyramid.
Right.
How to take one piece of content and turn it into 80 pieces.
Right.
And it's so easy. I could take a 1-hour podcast. I could turn it into 10 mini video clips. I could turn it into audio clips. I could turn it into audiograms, Instagram, Twitter quotes.
Yep.
You could do the transcript of it, put it out for SEO. I mean, there's a million things. You could turn it into a newsletter. I mean, like, it's insane. You take 1 hour of content and the incredible amount that you're going to get out of it.
Yep. I know we repurpose our podcast very similarly. We talked about that beforehand, of just constantly. And I think that's one of the things that people that are on the content journey, when they're overwhelmed by it, is they don't look for those opportunities where, hey, I can just recreate this, put this into a different format, and leverage myself. So I think a lot of people think that from the outside that aren't in the content journey yet, that everything is fresh content that's always created from scratch. And there's so much opportunity to be more leveraging that.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you say, like, if somebody's going to start a podcast, like, what do you think are the most important, crucial elements?
I think the first thing is that not everybody is meant to have a podcast. I think it's one of those things going back a couple of years ago, and everyone's like, all the gurus and the quote unquote coaches are like, you got to write a book. That's the way to do it. You got to write a book and have the credibility. Now it's podcasting. Everyone's got to have a podcast. My podcast is coming out. You got to check out my podcast, right? Like if you don't have the passion for it and you're not willing to do the work, don't even freaking bother.
Right.
I'm telling you right now, to do a podcast the right way is a lot of work.
Right.
And dedication and preparation. Because you can't record one and then, all right, we got to figure it out. We got to get it edited. You have to have the process. You have to know how it's going to go down. You have to figure things out. You have to have resources and be willing to commit to it. Otherwise, what's the point? Yep. If I put out a show and then, you're waiting 3 weeks for another episode, who the hell's going to want to wait around for that shit? No one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's, it's funny. As I got on my journey, and like I told you, I kind of fell into the whole podcasting thing through interviewing, exactly doing what we're doing right here. And I think you brought up the thing earlier. I wish somebody told me to get 7 episodes going first before I went out.
I wish I did too.
I'm like, oh shit, I got to start doing these things on a regular basis. Then it comes in scheduling guests.
Oh man.
So building that process out is critically important, like you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I wish, but it was a learning experience for me.
Yep.
I mean, luckily for me, I come from the world of account management in advertising. So I knew I had to apply project management discipline and organization, spreadsheets, tracking, workflow.
Right.
And now it's a well-oiled machine.
Yep.
I do probably once a month, usually at the beginning of the end of the month, wherever it kind of times out. When I have 5-6 episodes recorded, it'll all go to the editor. It'll all go to the video guy for clips. And I'll spend, a couple hours, going through my notes and adding in the clip notes and all these other things and building it out. And I block and tackle on my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I shut everything else off. I get it done. And then it's done for the next 6 weeks.
I know, but like when you're doing that, man, like isn't your recruiting business just falling apart when you time blocking?
No, it's a couple hours, or I'll do it at night, right? The recruiting business, the wheels keep on turning, man.
Yep. Now I just kind of bring that up jokingly because people are always like, oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. Oh, well, I need to make sure I got to focus on revenue driving activities.
It is a revenue driving activity.
That's bang. I'm glad you said it and not me, my friend.
Yeah.
So many people think the only revenue driving activity in this business, you got to be on the phone. If your team's not on the phone all day long, then shit, you're missing out. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You get so much more reach and impact from an hour podcast than you probably ever would in 8 hours of actually smiling and dialing,
Yeah. There's the ROI on it's incredible.
Yep. That's awesome, man. How do you go about, like, I know, just to kind of give people an inside, view and scope, you're showing up for the podcast. You have somebody that helps you book the guests. You have somebody that actually does the obviously you're not doing the editing. I'm sure you have a team.
Yeah, I'll break it down. I handle all bookings and management of the calendar. It's not even about micromanaging, but I need to keep control of that.
Right.
I know the type of guests that I want. I'm controlling the communication because it is my biz dev driver.
Yep.
And I want to be responsible for being that linchpin. And so many times also, here's the cool part. A lot of times when you're booking a big name guest or an executive, they have an EA. And you have the opportunity to communicate with that EA in such a good way where that EA is on your side, because that EA is the gatekeeper to everything. And once you start getting into the business side of it, if you could smooth talk an EA and you're on his or her good side, man, that's a trick right there.
Opens some
Right?
doors.
So that's why I handle it. It's also quality control. But the audio is outsourced, the video is outsourced, all the graphics are outsourced. But I am controlling the quality.
Right.
What goes out, I'm posting everything myself. I'm engaging with everything. I can't really stand when people are outsourcing their social media engagement. If you're on LinkedIn, I want to be talking to you. I don't want to be talking to your VA.
Right.
And I know a lot of accounts. I'm not going to give away the secrets here. A lot of accounts, you'll see VA talking to VA. You're like, oh my God, you're great. No, you're better. You're great. But it's 2 VAs talking to each other, not even the people on the accounts. And get that out of here.
Well, it goes
so
back to
lame.
Earlier what you're talking about is like, you can't fudge it. You can't fake it.
Oh, people do. People do.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, the house cards eventually is going to come down.
Right.
Once it comes to, let's hop on a quick phone call. This is the VA responding. Hold on, let me get to the.
Yeah, there's nothing behind there. All sizzle, no steak, man.
Exactly. Who would you say were like the biggest? Obviously you've been around some big names in your career with Howard. You didn't get to touch, but being around Gary V. But outside of that, I mean, who would you say are like some of the biggest mentors that have impacted you?
Yeah, so there's a few in my life at different levels. Joe Mullings, let's talk recruiting right now. For anybody in the recruiting world, if you don't know who Joe Mullings is, you need to check out Joe Mullings. He's down in South Florida. 30 years, built up a med tech recruiting business, $30-40 million in its heyday. But he also built out an incredible media empire in the
Right.
last few years, built out a beautiful studio. I've been down there right before COVID, and then I was down there about a month ago. And where he's taking the studio is incredible. And that studio is a lot of the inspiration of why I built out where we're in right now, that I could do recruiting and have the media side, and how do you bring those two things together. So I recorded episode 150 with him down there a few weeks ago. I'm going to drop that in a month or two. And it's just an off the cuff conversation about life and what's happening right now. But Joe's an inspiration to me. I also have a gentleman in my life called Marcus Glover. Marcus, I met about 7 years ago in my world of advertising. He was repping an athlete, Tavon Austin. I forgot what team Tavon's on right now. He's on special teams, wide receiver. And he brought Tavon into our ad agency. Tavon was a rookie, and he brought him in to get exposure to talking about brands and clients, whatever. Marcus and I hit it off, and Marcus is really instrumental in the African-American community. He is a real leader. Mm-hmm. And he opened up my eyes to a world that I never would even think. Basically, my worst fear is prison. Mm-hmm. You know, for this dad bod Jewish kid from Long Island, prison's probably the last place I ever want to be in life. I literally wouldn't last about a minute and a half in prison. I'd be done. Like, there's not even like they're like, oh,
what's your biggest fear about getting in there?
Right. Oh, we're not even gonna talk about that. Like, I was like, oh shit, I gotta go shank somebody now. Oh, oh man, I could build a shank. I'm telling you, I could build a badass shank.
Yep.
But then I got to go shank somebody. And I've seen Oz before. It's not fun. I don't want to be in there. So he started to involve me. He is the chairman of the tri-state area for Defy Ventures. If anyone is not familiar with Defy Ventures, it's basically Shark Tank in prison. It's a Baylor University accredited program that goes into the prisons, and it works with incarcerated men and women to teach them not just business and entrepreneurship and give them those tools that they need to succeed when they get out, but life skills that they may not know: how to balance a checkbook, how to properly apologize, how to look somebody in the eye and have a meaningful conversation with them, those life skills too. And it's been incredible. I've been in the prisons a couple of times with them, and it's eye-opening, and it takes me out of my comfort zone, and it puts me in a position to have real conversations. You don't have your phone with you. You don't have anything on you. You're just sitting across from people who have one bad decision that separates you from them.
Right. That's crazy.
Maybe they did something I did when I was younger, but they got caught and I didn't.
Yep.
Bad luck, color my skin, whatever the hell it is. But you go in there and it changes your perspective on everything. So Marcus Glover, he's been on my show a couple of times. Right after George Floyd, I had him on to have a real conversation about what the hell's happening out there. And he's just been a real motivator in my life.
That's awesome, dude. That's really cool.
Definitely check out Marcus Glover. Yeah.
Marcus Glover. So Joe Mullings, Marcus Glover. Yeah, I've followed Joe just coming into the industry. He's obviously a beast, a machine, especially when he's down on the media side of things.
Oh yeah,
I'll definitely check out Marcus. That's pretty awesome. You know, kind of going another step. You know, this whole conversation was basically facilitated on Clubhouse, and we didn't really even talk about this pre-show, but I know you're big into Clubhouse. What are you thinking about that? For those,
no, I am not big into Clubhouse. I'm not big on Clubhouse. I'm not high on Clubhouse. No. There's a lot of good on Clubhouse. There's a lot of incredible conversations, but at the end of the day, after 3 months of it's a time suck, tooting your own horn festival, I've tapped into rooms that have been incredible. I was in the Elon Musk room. I was in the Bill Gates room. I've heard some amazing conversations, but that is the exception, not the rule. It's just a lot of the same people talking and just blowing smoke. And it's like anything else. Like, you have to find the good. You have to find it, and you have to put in the work to find the good stuff. I found a lot of the smaller rooms are fantastic. So I leveled it down. I'm involved when I need to be. I dip in maybe a couple days a week. I host my one weekly room about podcasting. It's on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 under Club Pod, where I feature experts in the world of podcasting, not marketing or recruiting. And I also use it to feature past guests that have been on my show that might have their own podcast. And we tell those stories, as well, too. But Clubhouse is like anything else. Like any other, I don't TikTok. Lightly on Instagram. My platform is LinkedIn. You do not have to be on every platform all day long.
Yep, I think you find
what works for you.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. My sentiments are the same about Clubhouse. I went on, dabbled. I think it's good because that room that allowed me to, you and I to connect, and then I asked you to be on my podcast was exactly what you're describing. That's where I found the value. It's a smaller room, so it's more like a networking kind of closer connection.
Yeah.
I'm not the type of guy that would go, like, I wouldn't go listen to somebody else's stuff. I'm more of a facilitator. So for me, it's like, I would never hang out. Like, I just don't. Yeah.
I'll dip in like randomly. I'll dip in on a weekend. I'll dip in first thing in the morning. I'll see what's happening. I see the same people on all day long.
All the time.
I'm like, how fuck? I'm like, you like, I'm a
what else are you doing?
Billionaire entrepreneur. Like, are you working? Like, are you doing real stuff? Like, or you just leave your iPad open all day so you could kind of collect followers and grow your numbers and look like a beast? You know, it's a game. It's all a stupid game, man.
It is a game, man. It is a game.
All I worry about is my family. I worry about my business, and everything else is just gravy.
Yep. How do you deal with your haters, man?
I got a few early on that questioned my experience and my authority, and it hurt me at first. It definitely did. I took it personally. I dwelled on it.
Yep.
And then I forgot someone who told me, they're like, dude, you're not even connect. Why are you giving them any oxygen to breathe?
Yeah. Yeah.
But not so much haters, but Claude Silver said something really interesting around feedback. And we're talking about positive feedback, not like real outward hating, but if someone takes the time to give you unsolicited feedback or solicited feedback, that means that they care.
Right.
That means they care enough. If someone like really like wants to give you like constructive criticism, that's different than being haterade. But they still, even the haters, like you turn around, like Grant Cardone, that's what he said. He goes, haters are my fuel. Bring it on, ding dong. That's what he said. He literally said that. I turned it into a meme. It's fantastic.
Bring it on, ding dong.
Bring it on, ding dong. I was like, what? I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, good one. Thanks for that. He's like, bring it on.
Yeah, the haters are going to show up, and I think that's a part of anybody's journey, no matter what social media platform, whether you're podcasting, YouTubing, just writing content on LinkedIn. You know, the louder you get, the bigger your voice, the more people are going to start throwing an opposite opinion in there.
Right, and you know what? Like, I'm all for counter opinions. I mean, I'll field those all day long because you're entitled to your opinion, as long as you could back it up with fact and data. And the other thing I say is too, if you're trolling on my LinkedIn page and you don't like what I'm saying, dude, it's my car. I control what's playing on the radio. If you don't like it, I'll pull over and you can get the hell out.
Exactly. I personally wouldn't do anything like that. I just don't have enough time in my day to go talk shit to somebody else and try to bring somebody else down.
It's also it's a reflection on you, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a I've gotten a lot of hate just being not a recruiter, but coaching recruiters how to do marketing and business development, which are two separate things. But that was my first set of shade coming into the industry. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too. And I probably have given some non-recruiters some shit too. But if you're not teaching them how to recruit,
right?
You're teaching them the marketing and the systems, and that's a different skill set. If you were coming in trying to teach people how to recruit or interview skills, and that's a big thing that's going on right now with a lot of the hating.
Yep.
There's a lot of coaches coming out of the woodwork, and just because you're good at LinkedIn doesn't mean you're a freaking career coach.
Right.
Just because you've been on a few interviews and maybe you've been a hiring manager, if you've never sat behind an ATS, if you've never interviewed candidates, you have no business telling anybody how to recruit.
Yep. Well, I just stay right in my lane. Even people ask me like, hey man, not qualified to answer that.
Stay in your lane. And like you could have a perspective as a candidate. We've all been interviewed. We've all been through that before, and you could have an opinion, but that's like me going to the auto mechanic and telling him how to fix my car.
Exactly.
I have no business. I might have an idea of how to fix it, but I don't know shit.
Yep. 100%, man. Well, Adam, I thank you, man. Thank you for all your energy today, bringing all the value. For those of you that are listening, I mean, where could everybody, find you? Where should they follow you?
So we'll start with the podcast, the POZCAST, and you can find it very simple, thepozcast.com, available on all the major platforms. But if you go there, the podcast, there's an archive of all my shows. I also have all my live shows linked up there, which is pretty cool. That's a relatively new feature. You can engage on there and comment and share. And then on the business side, you go to NHPTalentGroup.com, open positions, a little bit more about our talent access model, and you can see how we do it.
Love it, brother. You delivered a lot of value today. If you could leave our guests with one final thought, what's the biggest piece of success coming from Adam here?
Yeah, and it gets real tactical, and it comes from Mr. Tom Hull, who was my mentor when I got into the world of recruiting, my first boss. And before I lifted up the phone, before I went to LinkedIn for the first time as a recruiter, he said, every day, start with this mantra: plan your work and work your plan. Plan your work and work your plan. Every day when I come in, and sometimes 9 out of 10 times I'm writing it down. Sometimes I don't write it down, but I know when I get to work what I'm going to accomplish for the day. Sure. And I execute on that and I get shit done.
Stay disciplined, baby. I love it. I love it.
Discipline's everything in recruiting.
Yep. Adam, thank you for joining us. Relevant Recruiter Group. We will see you next time.
Thanks, Donnie. Thanks, everybody.